My name is Joni. I'm 33 years old. And this is the story of how I became invisible in my own family, and what happened the moment I decided to stop apologizing for existing. I was born in Des Moines, Iowa, in a quiet suburb where the lawns were trimmed like carpet and the mailboxes were dressed up during the holidays. Our house was on the corner of Maple Lane. White siding, navy blue shutters, and a porch swing that groaned with the weight of every season. From the outside, we were perfect. But I knew better. My parents, Tom and Carol, had 3 kids, Ryan, Emily, and me. Ryan was the firstborn. The golden boy. Emily was the youngest and the baby. That made me the middle child. The forgotten one. I never asked to stand in the spotlight. I just didn't expect to be left out of the photo altogether. The first time I realized something was off, I was 8 years old. It was the night before the school science fair. I had worked for weeks on a solar system model, carefully painting each foam planet, even researching how to make Saturn's rings with transparent plastic and fishing line. I left it on my desk, smiling with pride. The next morning, I found it crushed on the floor. Neptune torn in half. Saturn flattened. Ryan was standing nearby, bouncing a basketball. He just shrugged. It was by the edge, he said, like gravity had committed the crime. You shouldn't make dumb stuff that breaks so easily. I ran to my parents, shaking with anger. He did it on purpose. I yelled. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. Don't make this a big deal, Joni. Mom sighed. Maybe Ryan didn't realize it was important to you. That night, Ryan worked on his own project at the kitchen table, a suspension bridge made of popsicle sticks. Dad helped him glue it together while I sat alone in my room, staring at my ruined planets. He won second place. I wasn't allowed to submit anything. From then on, every time I achieved something, it either got overshadowed or dismissed. When I made the honor roll in 6th grade, Ryan got caught sneaking cigarettes, and somehow the whole conversation turned into how hard it must be for him to deal with pressure. When I won a school poetry contest, Mom said, "That's cute. Maybe you inherited Grandma's sentimental streak." Every time Ryan messed up, he was figuring things out. Every time I succeeded, it was an accident, or worse, it made me look like I was trying too hard. It got to the point where I stopped bringing up anything good that happened in my life. What was the point? Holidays were the worst. Every year I'd hold on to the naive hope that maybe, just maybe, things would be different. That someone would ask how I was doing and wait long enough to hear the full answer. But no. One Thanksgiving when I was 25, I offered to host. I was living in a small apartment then, but it was mine. I cooked everything myself, stuffed mushrooms, roasted turkey, cranberry sauce from scratch. I even folded the napkins into little fans. That afternoon, I got a group text, "Hey Joni, Ryan wants to host instead. Emily's already over. Let's just do it here. Don't be upset, we'll do yours another time." I sat in that apartment with a full table of untouched food and no one to eat it with. That's when I started realizing something painful. It wasn't that they didn't know how to love me. They chose not to. I left Des Moines for good at 26 and moved to Minneapolis. There, I built a life on my own terms. I worked my way through grad school, got a job in sustainable architecture, and climbed up the ranks until I became lead designer on one of the biggest green projects in the state. The city featured our project in the paper. My team took me out for drinks. I posted a photo in the family group chat. Ryan replied with a selfie standing in front of a Tesla dealership. Emily sent a photo of her new poodle with a diamond collar. Mom didn't say anything. A week later, she called to ask if I'd help Emily plan her engagement party. "Don't wear anything too loud," she said. "We want the attention on the bride." That's when I started therapy. And that's when I began to realize that silence can be a kind of betrayal. The kind that doesn't bruise your skin but bruises your soul, slowly, and in places you didn't know existed. But the final crack came the year Grandma died. Her name was Lillian Rose. Everyone called her Granny Lily. She was the only one who ever made me feel seen. When I was 14, she gave me a heart-shaped silver necklace etched with a rose and whispered, "You're the one who'll carry the story." She had no reason to choose me over Ryan or Emily. But she did. Not because of success, but because she saw something real in me. She called me her heir, not in money, but in spirit. When she passed, I didn't get a call. I saw the news on Facebook. At the memorial dinner, I sat at the far end of the table. Halfway through dessert, I looked up and saw Alicia, my cousin, wearing that necklace. The exact one. The rose locket. My locket. My voice caught. "Where did you get that?" She blinked. "Grandma gave it to me." Said I reminded her of herself. I looked at Mom. She pretended not to hear. I looked at Dad. He topped off his wine. Afterward, when I brought it up, Mom said, "Don't be dramatic. We're all grieving. Don't turn this into something petty." Weeks later, the lawyer emailed me. There had been an old will, one I was included in, but Ryan had submitted a newer one after the funeral. A version that left me out completely. But I knew for a fact Grandma couldn't have signed anything new. She could barely hold a pen. I found the page in her journal. The one she let me see when I was in high school. Silver rose necklace to Joni. It belongs with her. Her handwriting, clear as day. And I had a photo. My 14th birthday. Granny Lily putting the necklace around my neck, her hands gentle, her face full of pride. I didn't argue. I documented. Every email. Every scan. Every memory. I wasn't going to shout at them. I was going to show them. On Christmas Eve. I spent the days leading up to Christmas wrapping the truth in silver paper. Not metaphorically, literally. I bought the most elegant wrapping paper I could find. Pale silver, printed with snowflakes and a deep green ribbon, the same green as Granny Lily's garden gate. Inside, I placed everything I had, the scanned journal page, emails from the lawyer, time-stamped messages from Ryan, and the photo of my grandmother putting the necklace on me. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about finally, after decades of being erased, placing something on the record. Making the truth unignorable. Still, when I pulled up in front of the old family home on Maple Lane, I hesitated. The porch still creaked in the same place it always had. The holiday wreath hung crookedly, the gold bells dulled by dust. A little inflatable Santa leaned sideways on the lawn, half deflated. It looked tired. I knew how he felt. I adjusted my scarf, picked up the pie I'd baked using Granny's recipe, and tucked the silver gift box under my arm. My heart thumped like I was heading into enemy territory. Not because I was afraid, but because I had finally chosen to stop playing nice. Inside, it was chaos. Emily was live streaming herself in front of the fireplace, showing off her poodle's new sweater. Ryan was already loud, showing Dad pictures on his phone of some investment property in Miami. Mom darted between the kitchen and dining room with her usual passive-aggressive muttering, "Watch your shoes, don't touch the pie crust, don't rearrange the table." No one looked at me when I walked in. No Merry Christmas, no how was your drive. Just a flick of a glance, like I was the UPS driver dropping off a late package. I placed the pie carefully on the kitchen counter, right next to Mom's store-bought cheesecake. "Watch the counter," she said without turning around. "That glaze smears." "Got it," I replied calmly, and then added, "I brought gifts." She paused briefly, then continued stirring her gravy. "That's fine. We've already done most of ours. You can put them under the tree." And so I did. I slipped the box wrapped in silver paper right at the center, beneath the fake pine tree they had dragged out every year since I was 10. The lights blinked in rhythm, like they were counting down. When the dinner bell rang and everyone gathered around the long oak table, I noticed something immediately. 12 place settings. Only 11 chairs. No name card for me. I walked to the kitchen, pretending to refill my water. "Mom," I asked quietly, "where's my seat?" She didn't even look up. "Oh, we thought you'd prefer to eat in the living room." With Emily live streaming and the noise, it just seemed better. I blinked. "I'm eating alone?" "You're not alone. You're with us. Just in another room." Ryan snorted behind me. "Guess the black sheep gets her own pasture." That did it. I turned around, walked back to the dining room, and picked up the silver-wrapped box from beneath the tree. Their laughter softened as they watched me return, gift in hand. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I placed the box gently in front of Ryan. He looked at it like it might explode. "What's this?" he asked. "Something you've been hiding," I said quietly. He scoffed. "If this is another one of your overreactions, Ava." "It's not," I interrupted. "It's everything you tried to keep buried." Mom stood. "Joni, if this is another one of your..." "No," I said firmly, looking her directly in the eyes. "You don't get to interrupt this time." Ryan untied the ribbon, peeled back the paper, and lifted the lid. Silence. On top was the photo, Granny Lily smiling, hands fastening the rose necklace around my neck. He blinked, hesitated, and pulled out the next page. The journal scan. Her handwriting. The words unmistakable, silver rose necklace to Joni. Then the lawyer's email, original will submitted prior to funeral. Replaced 2 days later by version signed under medical distress. Then his own messages, "Let's handle this discreetly. We don't need unnecessary complications." "None of this is out of context," Ryan stammered. "Is it?" I asked. Andrea, his wife, leaned in, squinting at the papers. "Ryan, is this true?" "It's fabricated, she's twisting this." "Those emails came from your account," I said calmly. "The dates don't lie. Neither does Granny's handwriting." Emily stood, her phone still clutched in her hand. "Why are you doing this? Over a necklace?" I shook my head slowly. "This isn't about a necklace. This is about a pattern that's lasted for 33 years. My father, who hadn't spoken a word, finally leaned back and looked toward the window. "Coward." I turned toward the rest of them. "I didn't come here to take anything. I came here to leave something. The truth." And with that, I placed one more item on the table, a handwritten note. Ryan picked it up, read it, and turned pale. Mom tried to snatch it, but I stopped her. "Don't worry," I said. "I brought enough copies." The note said, "I release you from pretending. And I release myself from trying. I no longer need recognition from a family who only sees value when it suits them." I turned around and walked toward the door. No one followed. No one called after me. Just the clink of forks on china. Like nothing had happened. But I knew. For once, they had heard me. Whether they admitted it or not. They would spend the rest of that meal eating beside a box full of truth. And the aftertaste would never go away. I stepped out into the cold, leaving the door ajar behind me just long enough to hear the hum of awkward silence settle over the dining room like dust on forgotten furniture. No one chased after me. That used to sting. It used to leave a crater in my chest. But not this time. This time, their silence was my answer. And that answer wasn't grief. It was freedom. My car was cold when I climbed in. I sat for a moment, hands resting on the wheel, eyes fixed on the house I used to call home. The lights inside glowed with holiday warmth, red, gold, and white twinkles against frosted windows, but to me, it was just a stage, and the actors had all forgotten their lines. I drove home with the radio off. I wanted to hear nothing but the steady rhythm of my own breath. No holiday music. No family chatter. No fake laughter. Just me, reclaiming every mile with each turn. When I walked into my apartment, it welcomed me like an old friend. The soft olive green walls I had painted myself. The shelf where I kept Granny Lily's photo in a silver rose frame. My home smelled of cinnamon and something more subtle, peace. I poured a glass of wine and sat on the couch with my legs curled beneath me. I pulled out my journal and wrote one sentence across a fresh page. Today, I left the version of myself they created and took the real me with me. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. 3 days later, just before 8 a.m., my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something, curiosity, intuition, made me swipe to answer. Hello? The voice was raw. Strained. Joni? It's Rachel. Andrea's friend. Ryan's wife. I didn't respond right away. She took a deep breath. I need to ask, that folder you gave him, was it real? I set down my coffee. My heart didn't race. My hand didn't shake. This was no ambush. Just a woman trying to claw her way out of a lie. Yes, I said. Every word is backed up. I have the originals. Rachel exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since Christmas Eve. I read everything. Twice. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Ryan told me you forged it. Said you had a grudge, that you were always making things up. He said you wanted attention. A pause. But the more I read, the more I started remembering emails. Things he said in passing. Even voice recordings I thought were harmless. I compared the handwriting. Anne. I just knew. You weren't lying. I stayed silent. I left, she said finally. Took the kids. I'm staying with my sister for now. I don't know if I'm divorcing him yet, but I couldn't stay. I couldn't keep pretending nothing happened. My voice, when it came, was soft. You don't have to explain. You did what you needed to do. She let out something close to a sob, but it was quiet. Almost peaceful. Thank you, she whispered. For showing me. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes and felt something shift. Not revenge. Not victory. Just closure. That same afternoon, my receptionist buzzed the office line. There's a woman here. She says her name is Alicia? I paused mid-sentence, fingers hovering over my keyboard. I'll come out. I found her standing in the lobby, wrapped in a long burgundy coat. In her hands, a small black velvet box. She didn't try to hug me. Didn't smile. I won't come in, she said. I just wanted to return this. She opened the box. The silver rose necklace gleamed under the lobby lights, familiar and humble. It's not mine. I'm sorry I didn't give it back sooner. I didn't speak. She hesitated. Ryan told me you didn't care about Grandma. That you were only after this because it was worth money. I believed him. Another pause. I thought you were just jealous. I finally spoke. I never wanted the necklace because of what it was worth. I wanted it because of who gave it to me. I know that now. She placed the box gently on the table beside the sign-in sheet. I hope you find peace. And just like that, she was gone. Later that week, a message lit up my phone. Unknown sender. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee? No drama. Just a conversation. Dad. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Okay. Tuesday. 10 a.m. Corner Roast Cafe. He was already seated when I arrived, a paper cup in his hand and his old corduroy coat draped over the back of the chair. For the first time in years, he didn't force a smile. "Thanks for coming." I said nothing. He stared at his coffee. "I don't have excuses. I let things happen." I knew Ryan had issues, but I stayed quiet. "I didn't want to upset your mom. I thought avoiding conflict meant keeping the family together." I looked down at my hands. He continued, slower this time. "I see now, keeping peace at the cost of fairness isn't peace at all. It's cowardice." I let his words sit there, heavy and honest. "I'm sorry," he added. "For not standing by you. For letting you feel like a stranger in your own home." I didn't say I forgave him. But I didn't walk away either. Sometimes silence is just another way to say, "We'll see." On New Year's Eve, I received a short message from Emily. "Do you have time to talk? I've started therapy." That night made me reflect. Maybe I need to take responsibility too. I waited until the next morning to reply. "When you're truly ready, I'll still be here." A week later, Aunt Megan sent me a handwritten letter. "Joni, I didn't speak that night. And that's been bothering me. I followed your mother's lead. I see now that silence is complicity. I'd like to see you, if you'll allow it. I missed too many years I should have cherished you." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I didn't toss it. I didn't frame it either. Not everything needs to be forgiven. But some things deserve space. Mom didn't send a letter. She didn't call to say sorry. What she did do was 3 days after the news about Rachel leaving Ryan spread through the family like spilled wine on white linen, was call me. Not to ask if I was okay. Not to acknowledge what happened. "Joni," she said, her voice sharp and cold, "are you trying to tear this family apart? Christmas is about togetherness. Not staging dramatic confrontations." She didn't ask what was in the folder. She didn't ask what Ryan had done. She just wanted me to smooth it all over like I always had. "I'm done pretending," I said, and hung up. Then came the text messages. "Are you finished with your little performance? You always push people into corners, then act like the victim. You've always been like this, Joni." And then, as if her fingers ran out of venom and reached for nostalgia. "I just want things to go back to how they were. Family is family. Can't we move on?" I didn't respond. My silence was no longer an act of defeat. It was a boundary. One I wasn't going to cross again, not even for her. That January, I repainted my apartment walls from soft gray to bold olive green. I removed the family portraits from the hallway, photos I'd hung out of obligation, not affection, and replaced them with black and white shots of the community projects I'd designed. Not to show off, but to remind myself. I built this. I did something good. And no one can steal it. I bought a tiny cactus for the kitchen windowsill. It didn't need much water, but it lived. It thrived. Even in dry conditions. I looked at it every morning while pouring coffee and thought. I survived just like this. Even when they gave me nothing. By early spring, my world was quieter. Not empty, just finally free of noise that never deserved space. And then came the biggest project of my life. The city approved my proposal to redevelop an abandoned industrial site into a green innovation hub. Think tech startups, co-op kitchens, solar-paneled roofs, art gardens, all in one sustainable community. They called me the face of modern Midwestern design. The interview ran in Greenarchy. I printed out a copy and placed it beside the photo of Granny Lily on my bookshelf. She would have been proud. I could almost hear her voice in the silence of my apartment. Told you, sweetheart. You've got roots deeper than they know. One rainy afternoon after a planning meeting, Ethan, an environmental engineer I'd worked with on the project, asked if I wanted to grab a coffee. We'd worked together for months. He was steady, kind, and always brought his ideas to the table without needing to be the loudest voice in the room. At the cafe, I sipped a red wine while he stirred his tea absent-mindedly with the back of a spoon. The place smelled of cinnamon and rain. "I read your interview," he said quietly. That line, reviving spaces, is also a way to revive people. It stayed with me. I glanced at him, surprised. "You remembered it word for word?" He shrugged with a smile. "Why wouldn't I?" It wasn't flattery. He wasn't trying to impress me. His voice held no performance, no agenda. Just truth. And I realized I wasn't used to that. We started seeing each other more. Nothing fast, nothing performative. Just consistent. Ethan never asked about my family. Not once. He respected the parts of my life I kept private, and I found myself opening up not because I had to, but because I wanted to. For the first time, I wasn't scared someone would use my truth as a weapon. I introduced him to my neighbors. Mr. Darrell downstairs, who made seafood stew every Sunday and always saved me a bowl. Dev, my college friend who checked in every time snow was forecast. Clara, my coworker from years ago who showed up with scones and stayed just to talk. I created a new group in my contacts. Real ones. It had 5 names. 5 people who had never made me feel invisible. One Saturday night, I hosted a dinner for them. Just 6 of us. No fancy centerpiece. No rehearsed toasts. Just food, stories, laughter, and space. When Clara raised her glass to share a story about her grandmother, no one interrupted. When Dev talked about his failed startup, no one laughed. When Ethan rested his hand on the back of my chair, it wasn't possessive. It was grounding. This wasn't the picture-perfect family table I had dreamed of for years. But it was better. Because no one at that table needed me to shrink to make space for them. I looked around and realized something I had never been taught. You don't need to be born into a family to have one. You can build your own. Spring bled softly into summer, and I could feel the quiet healing in my life like the slow bloom of a flower that had once been buried under ice. No dramatic turning points. Just warmth where there had once been chill. I was no longer chasing calls from my mother or wondering what Ryan was doing. I didn't refresh the family group chat to see if anyone finally noticed my promotions, my interviews, or the small, joyful details of my days. The chat had gone mostly silent since Christmas anyway, just the occasional forwarded meme or Emily's updates about her poodle's new training tricks. I never responded. I didn't block anyone. I didn't delete the thread. I simply stopped engaging. That was my quiet revolution. It had taken me 33 years to realize I didn't need to run away to find peace. I just had to stop running toward people who never reached back. Then, in early June, a letter came in the mail. It was hand-addressed, formal, and on crisp ivory stationery. The letterhead read, "Lillian R. Miller Memorial Fund Committee." My heart skipped a beat. I opened it carefully. Inside was a typed note from the committee, informing me that a donor had contributed in my grandmother's name to establish a grant for young women in sustainable design. The grant would bear her name, and mine. The Lillian and Joni Miller Grant for Emerging Voices in Sustainable Architecture. I stared at the page, stunned. There was no signature. Just a contact line. Please direct questions to anonymous donor at civicfuture.org. I blinked, then laughed softly. It didn't take a genius to guess who was behind it. Aunt Megan. I hadn't spoken to her since her handwritten letter in January. But this was her. Quietly writing what had once gone so wrong. I sent her a thank you note that week. Simple, handwritten. I didn't say much. Just, you reminded me that sometimes, redemption is a whisper, not a spotlight. Thank you for giving her legacy back to me. 2 days later, I received a photo in my email. Megan had gone to the old family photo albums. The image showed Granny Lily in her garden, holding me on her hip, both of us laughing. The rose necklace was barely visible, resting just below her collar. The subject line said, "I found this. It belongs with you." I cried for the first time in months. Not from pain. From being seen. A few weeks later, I hosted another dinner at my apartment. Clara brought her husband this time. Dev brought his new girlfriend. Ethan made roasted vegetables and, without asking, stayed after everyone left to help clean. He played jazz through the speakers while I washed dishes, and I realized the silence in my kitchen now wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. At one point, I leaned against the counter, wiping my hands on a towel. "I used to think holidays were about who you were born to," I said aloud. "Now I think they're about who lets you rest your shoulders at the table." Ethan looked at me with those calm, steady eyes. Home is where you don't have to explain yourself. We didn't need to say more. Later that week, I got another text from Emily. "I know we weren't close. But I'm still in therapy. Anne. I'm starting to remember things. Stuff Mom used to say. How she'd pit us against each other. I think I believed her too easily. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times. It didn't absolve her. But it showed movement. That mattered. I replied. "If you're working on healing, I support that. Just know I won't go backward to make others comfortable." She responded with a single word. Understood. That was more respect than I had received from her in over 2 decades. But not everyone changed. Mom sent me a long-winded email in late July. Full of old lines, carefully worded guilt, vague comments about how I had always been sensitive, how families drift apart if someone holds on to hurt, how I should consider being the bigger person. At the bottom was a photo of a family barbecue Ryan had hosted. Everyone smiling, red cups in hand. Even Alicia was there. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to a folder labeled, "Never Again." That was the only closure I needed. At the office, I prepared the final blueprints for the Innovation Hub's construction. The launch date was set for the following spring, and a journalist from Modern Architecture Weekly had reached out for an in-depth feature. They asked me how it felt to lead the project. I answered without thinking. It feels like planting a flag in ground that was never supposed to hold me. The article went viral in the design community. Other women emailed me. Students reached out, asking for mentorship. My inbox filled with messages not of praise, but of recognition. And that meant more than anything. Because people weren't just noticing my work. They were seeing me. In August, the days were long, and the light poured through my apartment like honey. I spent mornings with coffee on my balcony, watching the city breathe itself awake. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't bracing for the next dismissal, the next manipulation, or the next twisted family story. I had stopped expecting recognition from the Millers. And once I did, I noticed something incredible. I no longer needed it. My identity was no longer built around being tolerated. It was built around being truthful. And truth didn't beg to be loved, it simply existed. Then, one afternoon, I received a message that made my breath catch. It was from Rachel. Not a phone call this time. A letter. Handwritten. 3 pages long. She had filed for divorce. In her words. I kept thinking the kids needed both of us. But then I realized they didn't need a perfect image, they needed an honest mother. I couldn't teach them strength while living in fear. She wrote about how she found a journal I had kept years ago, the one Granny Lily gave me when I left for college. Ryan had told her it was just sad ramblings. But after Christmas, she had read every word. It was the most unedited, painful, beautiful thing I've ever read, she wrote. It showed me the cost of silence. At the end of her letter, she said, I hope one day I can be the kind of woman who knows who she is, the way you do. I folded the letter and placed it on my bookshelf next to Granny Lily's framed photo. That shelf had become a quiet shrine, not to grief, but to survival. That same week, a package arrived at my office. No return address. Inside was a small wooden box. Polished, hand-carved. When I opened it, my eyes widened. It was a key. And a note. For the house. Granny Lily's house. She wanted it to go to you. I took it off the market. Do with it what you want. Aunt Megan. I sat at my desk, stunned. Granny's house. The cottage with the pink hydrangeas and the back porch that smelled like mint in the summer. The place where I first learned what love could feel like. I drove there 2 weekends later. The house was quiet, untouched. Dust floated in the light like slow-moving stars. The old wooden floors creaked just the way I remembered. I walked into Granny's bedroom and saw the roseprint wallpaper still curling at the edges. Her dresser was empty now, but the mirror, framed in antique bronze, still stood. I sat down on the edge of her bed and whispered, "I made it." That night, I slept in my old childhood guest room with the windows cracked open. Wind rustled the trees, and I felt her presence in the calm. In the morning, I stood on the porch and made my decision. I wasn't going to live there. But I was going to restore it. I partnered with a local historical preservation society. I donated the house in Granny's name, under one condition: it would become a safe space for young girls pursuing education in the arts or design, a retreat, a haven, a mentorship center. I called it the Lily Rose Project. And I didn't just fund it. I led it. I spoke at the first orientation in the fall. 20 students sat in that restored living room, bright-eyed and hungry for hope. I told them, "You don't need to be born into a perfect family to belong somewhere. You just need to remember you're worthy of love that doesn't ask you to shrink." That day, I watched the light catch the rose necklace I wore, now a symbol not of loss, but of inheritance. Not the material kind. The spiritual kind. I was no longer waiting for someone else to give me my place. I had already built it. Around the same time, Ethan and I started spending more weekends together. We didn't define anything. We didn't rush. He respected the pace I set. One Sunday morning, we made pancakes. No special occasion. No performance. Just a quiet routine of slicing strawberries and debating which jazz playlist to play. As we sat down to eat, he looked at me and said something that landed deeper than any compliment I'd ever received. "You don't flinch anymore when someone loves you." I didn't even realize it until he said it. I used to flinch. At kindness. At softness. At the idea that I could receive without owing. But now? Now, I simply smiled and passed him the maple syrup. That Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner again. But this time, I didn't invite everyone. Just the people who had stood beside me when it mattered. Ethan. Clara. Dev, Mr. Darrell. 2 of the students from the Lily Rose Project. Aunt Megan. The table wasn't long. The plates didn't match perfectly. But every chair was filled with intention. We went around sharing one thing we had let go of this year. When it came to me, I said, I let go of the need to be understood by people who never tried to know me. Everyone clinked glasses. No one tried to correct me. No one shifted uncomfortably. No one minimized it with a joke. Because this table? It wasn't built on obligation. It was built on respect. As I looked around, I didn't feel like the forgotten middle child anymore. I felt like the woman who had outgrown the house that kept shrinking around her. And I realized something profound. Sometimes the life you deserve can only begin after you walk away from the one you were born into. Winter returned quietly. There was no dramatic snowfall, no sudden freeze. Just a slow chill in the air, a softness in the clouds, and the early darkness creeping in before dinner. I found myself lighting more candles in the evenings. Not because I was cold, but because I wanted the glow. That warm, silent flicker that reminded me, light could come from within. December arrived, and with it, the invitation. It came as a simple, white card in a red envelope, tucked into my mailbox without a return address. Christmas Eve dinner. 6 p.m. Family home. Please come. Mom. No apology. No explanation. Just an expectation, neatly written. I stared at it for a full minute. Then another. It didn't sting. It didn't make me anxious. It didn't even make me angry. It made me tired. Not physically. Just tired of being offered crumbs and being told it was a feast. Still, I decided to go. Not to forgive. Not to reconnect. But to end it. Fully. On my terms. On Christmas Eve, I stood once again in front of the house I grew up in. The same wooden door. The same crooked wreath. The same scent of something baking inside. But I wasn't the same. I stepped in wearing a long black wool coat. Simple, elegant. The rose necklace rested just beneath my collarbone, not on display, but not hidden either. Mom saw me first. She gave a tight smile. You made it. I did, I said calmly. Emily appeared from the hallway, holding a tray of cookies. Hi, she said. No smugness. No passive aggression. Just a soft, almost awkward acknowledgement. Hi, I replied. Ryan was in the living room with Dad. Neither of them stood when I entered. Dad gave me a quick glance, then looked away. Ryan didn't even speak. Fine. I placed a small box on the table by the tree. It wasn't for them. It held letters from Lily Rose students, letters I had collected over the past year. I planned to bring them home after dinner, but I liked the symbolism of placing something meaningful under a tree that had once only held expectations I could never meet. Dinner was set at a long table again. 12 chairs this time. And this year, my name was there. Calligraphy on a place card, Joni. I sat. Quietly. I wasn't here to provoke. I wasn't here to perform. As the meal began, conversation moved in slow, shallow waves. The usual topics. Emily's new job in marketing. Ryan's real estate ventures. Mom's knee acting up again. No one asked me anything. And I didn't offer. Midway through dessert, Mom cleared her throat. I've been thinking a lot about last Christmas. The room went still. I handled things poorly, she said. I didn't protect you the way I should have. I let some people dictate what this family should look like. I followed a script that never made room for you. I blinked. The words landed somewhere unexpected, not quite in forgiveness, but in surprise. I can't fix it, she continued. I don't expect you to forget. But I want you to know that this family, it should have always made room for you. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, I stopped waiting for someone to make space. I made my own. She nodded slowly. I see that now. I looked around the table. Ryan stared down at his plate. Emily was watching me. Dad, he just sat there, his face unreadable. Maybe that was his final position, silent neutrality. At least now I knew what to expect. After dessert, I stood up. I have something to say before I go, I said. Everyone looked at me. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm just done trying to fit into a shape you carved without me in mind. I don't want apologies. I want boundaries. Ryan rolled his eyes. Here we go. No, I said, turning to him. Here I go. Away from this script. Away from this loop. I walked to the tree and picked up the box of letters. These are from girls who used to think they didn't belong anywhere. Until someone told them they did. Granny did that for me. And now, I'm doing it for them. Mom's eyes were glassy. She didn't speak. I stepped toward the door. Joni, Emily called softly. I turned. If you ever want to talk, I'd like to try. Not as your sister. Just as someone who's still learning how to grow. I nodded once. When you're ready. Then I left. And this time, I didn't look back. Outside, the air was sharp, the kind that wakes your skin. I drove home in silence again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like space had been cleared for new things to grow. That night, I sat on my balcony again. Ethan joined me, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. We didn't speak much. We didn't have to. The city lights shimmered beneath us. The necklace around my neck caught the glow. I thought about Granny Lily. About what she saw in me. And how she knew, long before I ever did, that I wasn't just someone who survived pain. I was someone who could transform it. Into purpose. Into power. Into peace. Joni's story is a reminder that sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't vengeance, it's becoming whole in the face of those who tried to fracture you. Her family didn't give her the validation she deserved. But she didn't let that define her worth. She walked away, built her own legacy, and became the kind of woman no one could ignore. Let this be a call to everyone who has ever felt unseen in the spaces that should have loved them. You don't need permission to become who you were meant to be. What would you do if you were Joni? Would you have walked away or stayed to fight? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful, emotional stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters most.